through. I would like to begin the second half of our program. So it's time for our keynote speaker, and we're so fortunate to have another successful local entrepreneur here this evening. I would like to ask Diane Doherty to come to the stage to introduce our keynote speaker. As I mentioned earlier, Diane is the director of the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center's Western Mass Regional Office, and she has been active with Grinspoony Eyes since the beginning. Diane? Thank you. This is awesome, this perspective, to see almost 500 of you here celebrating entrepreneurship. I am very privileged to be able to introduce Aaron to you. But before I do that, I have two thank yous, and one of them is already missing. So I'll start with the one who's not missing. They're both missing. One is Carrie. Where is Carrie? Carrie Carpenter, who does such a fabulous job with this program. And the other is Harold, and he can't be too far away. Diane, where's Harold? All right. The other is Diane Trotterman, and we'll get Harold when he comes back. Diane Trotterman, thank you so much for all you do here. So you all have Aaron's bio in your program, so I'm not going to do all those factual things. I asked Aaron who I should talk to get the inside scoop, and he gave me 3 names. One was his wife, one was his partner, and one was his brother. And I learned a lot. So I'm going to share some of those stories with you. Only the good ones. Okay. Starting with Audrey, who is an associate professor at Mount Holyoke, my alma mater. Yay, Mount Holyoke. She told me that there were so many stories that she would have a hard time choosing. But she told me how they met in the stacks, when she was in the theory stacks, and Aaron was in the software engineering stacks, and somehow those stacks overflowed, and all of a sudden, Aaron was in her stack. So you never know who you're going to meet in the stacks, so don't avoid them, and just remember that. And somehow, they were both sort of non-communicative for a while, but somehow, according to Audrey, Aaron didn't have to ask anyone out. Other people asked him out, and I wondered about that until his partner told me that he was a bodybuilder at the time, and so that's why he got all the invitations. But thank you, Audrey, for doing that. And that is the best story, I think. And she said, I'm not sure if Aaron's going to be upset with me, but one night, in the middle of the night, Audrey is wakened from a very sound sleep, and she's going like this and talking out loud. What is going on here? And he is solving a game solution in his sleep. So I think you could say it is safe to say that Aaron lives, eats, breathes, and sleeps video games. So that was Audrey's story. Paul gave me a nice lengthy email talking about Aaron's growing up in Alaska, where his parents, and his dad is here tonight, and his nephew is here tonight, and his wife is here tonight. So it's nice to have the family here. And his parents were working with the Inuit tribe in Alaska. Paul informed me that none of the outdoor assets of Alaska rubbed off on Aaron, that he still was very much in the library and into his books. So when he came back to Amherst, he got involved with his older brother, Alex, who is the founder of Wild Tangent, which some of you who are into video games may know that name. And he is an industry guru, and he picked Aaron to be his mentee. And both Paul and Aaron told me how much they learned from Alex. I tried to reach Alex. I want to share with you his email address. It is thesaint@alexstjohn.com. Unfortunately, we never connected. I think he was traveling, but I told him I was looking for a good story because I'd never communicated with the saint before by email. So I'm hoping that email will still come. Anyway, they learned their technical skills from Alex, but according to Paul, not only the technical, but the general business, people management, negotiation skills. And those things, in addition to getting him hooked on the game industry, Aaron knew that he wanted to have his own business someday. Back to Amherst for his undergraduate and his master's, and he has now been here for 20 years. And we're very grateful to Audrey and to Aaron for staying in the Valley and keeping that kind of talent in the Valley and helping us to recruit other such talent to the Valley. So thank you, Audrey and Aaron. For your love of the Valley and for establishing a technology-based industry here. Paul was designing games for Milton Bradley, his partner. Is Paul here tonight? He said he was going to try. And he ultimately, Aaron had a small business, and they both did, and they decided to merge their businesses. And their responsibilities when they first merged them stayed the same as they were when they started. Both do business development, which is probably the toughest side of any business, bringing in new business. So they're both good at sales. Paul does the day-to-day production and operations, and Aaron heads the creative design side of the business. And while Paul suggests that they're very different people, with Aaron focusing on the big picture and what is next, and Paul focusing on the details and of the time frames and the budgets, strategically they are very much on the same page in their understanding of the industry. And it's a fast-evolving industry, as I'm sure you're going to hear from Aaron shortly. They both acknowledge the impact of the help from Alex, and they are really grateful for the industry connections and contacts who have helped them to challenge some of the assumptions that they've made about their business. I'm grateful to Audrey because it was through Audrey that I met Aaron at a Smith event where she introduced Aaron to our MSBDC offices, and I've had the pleasure of watching his business evolve from a barn in Hatfield to office on University Drive in Amherst, and most recently to downtown Springfield, which we're so happy to have him there. And he is the first recipient of the Mass Mutual Venture Fund investment, as well as the recipient of the largest number of RVI, River Valley investors, and a local angel investor group who has backed him with great anticipation and hopes for his future. I want to thank Aaron for being here. I want to thank him for his commitment to the Valley, to the video game industry, and to entrepreneurship. It's a pleasure to introduce you, Aaron. Thank you.
Diane, that was amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, Harold, for hosting this wonderful gathering, and Carrie for organizing it. It's been great. So how many people, who plays video games, right? Who has a mother or a grandmother or a daughter or a son or a nephew that plays video games? Everyone, right? Everyone plays video games. And so, what I can tell you about myself is, I love making games, right? That's what my life is, my full life ambition, right? I make games for everyone, right? So I made games for you. I made games that your mom plays. I made games that your nephew or niece or daughter had played. I made games for toilet paper. I made games for dog food. I made games for body spray. So one of the first games that Paul and I built when we started Hit Point was for Axe body spray. We did a motorcycle game where you had to spray yourself with body spray partway through to win prizes. Probably our best game. Our longest running game is a game for health insurance or life insurance. So it's you raise a family and you buy insurance policies on them, and then horrible stuff happens to them. And you can't. So you're the more horrible stuff happens, the better you're doing in the game as long as you're buying insurance. So, and I was thinking, and as I was watching people, you guys giving your great elevator pitches, which fantastic job. That's kind of where a lot of this started for me. Was I started as an intern at a company called Monolith. My academic history, at least up until I started my internship, was not great. I barely made it out of high school. I barely was just getting by in college, and thankfully, through my brother, I was able to get an internship doing programming at a video game company called Monolith. And this company was kind of an interesting transition. They had just raised about $10 million, and they were going to make their own games. And so they asked everyone in the company, it was about a 100-person company, to pitch. What game should we make? And so, for me, I'd never been motivated by anything. I'm still not motivated by anything else except video games. Essentially, I spent most of my time in high school playing Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a card game. Or I would sneak out of classes and I would make games with my friends. So the first game that I ever made was a game called Space Bunnies. It was it was a sort of like chess, but with like alien bunny rabbits that blew up as pawns. All right, that was our brilliant idea. The game sucked. It was a horrible game, but I had other people play it. People laughed. They were like, oh, and I was just like, oh, I want to find a way to do that. And I never made the connection between, how do I get there? Obviously I had this brother who was kind of a celebrity in the game industry, and he's always talking about the game industry. But I can never draw a path like, oh, how do I get from here? I'm a high school kid or guy going out of college to where I want to be, which is I want to be making Quake, or I want to be making I don't know, Magic Carpet, any game ideas. I had all these ideas for games, but there's no instruction manual, there's no class that I was taking that was like, oh, well, you want to make a game, kid? Okay, read this book. It's nothing like that. And so my entire life it's been, kind of making these decisions of, hey, is this getting me closer to making video games? Is this the thing that I should be doing to make video games? And, it never really kind of gelled for me. But through this internship, I thought I'd seen the light. It's like, okay, this is it. I'm going to pitch, the best game idea that I can come up with. And so we had, 100 people in the company. And the thing about the game industry is everyone wants to make games, and there's only very few game ideas that get through. So everyone pitched. It was about 300 different game ideas, and it was kind of this situation. We had to go up in front and elevator pitch our game idea. I was 19 years old, and it just so happened that they came down. They decided that the top 3 games they were going to fund, and it turned out that 2 of them were games that I pitched. And so my life completely changed at that moment. Right, before I had been, probably the same age as you guys, just out of college, or just still in college, barely in college, because I still wasn't doing that great. Doing a programming job, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, we love your idea, kid. You're hired. You're going to make it. And they funded it for $4 million. And, again, at that time, the only game that I'd made, was Space Bunnies. Right? I had that in my resume. And a couple others, I played, so I was like, oh, heck yeah, I'm going to make a game. And so I got paired with, they weren't that crazy. They didn't just give me $4 million. They had obviously a team, very experienced team that they put me with. I got paired with kind of a celebrity game designer. He made, probably all of you guys will never know this game, but I'm going to say it. It's a game called Blood, which was, awesome, right? It's a game, it was a first-person shooter based on the Duke Nukem engine. You played a zombie cowboy, and you had to go basically kill things. I think that was basically the plot. It's like, you're a zombie cowboy, kill stuff. But it was a really popular game at the time, and I had known about the game before I went to Monolith, and the guy that was my mentor, he was the guy that designed the game. And so, here I was in this fantasy situation, but I had no experience, I had no idea what I was doing, but my game idea was funded for $4 million, and I was in charge of getting it done, and I had this awesome mentor. But essentially what happened, though, was, he started out like, hey, do this, then do this, and, I'll work on this stuff over here, and, he would always be working with his door closed. And, I was like, okay, I'll just, this game's going to be awesome. And, in case you're wondering, the game idea it's called Sanity Icon's Artifact. It was based on, psychic cops that they would go, they had these powers that they got, it's kind of, so the guy that did the voice, I don't know if you know Ice-T, the rapper Ice-T. So the voice of my character was, this guy's name's Kane, and he was trying to find his brother Abel, who was this nutty white guy. Ice-T did the voice, And basically, they're these cops that were so psychic that they could make people's heads explode. It was based on a movie called Scanners, which you should see the movie. It's like this really, really horrible movie. Anyways, that was the idea that they funded for $4 million, which turned into $8 million. And it was based on my favorite game, which was Magic the Gathering. My idea was I wanted to have a real-time version of Magic, and which had a complicated spell system and all these very intricate things that no one knows how to do really until you try it. But so it turned out my mentor actually, everything what he was doing when his door was closed was he was actually playing video games. He had completely checked out of the company, and so about a month and a half into development, they fired him. And now I didn't have a mentor; it was just me, and I was managing a team of 30, trying to put this game together that I had no idea, and I was literally sleeping under the desk. Day in, day out, just trying to write docs, talk to people, trying to figure out how to make this game. And, sure enough, it wasn't just me, obviously. It was a team of 30 people, and a lot of them had industry. And so they're kind of like, I would come in and be like, hey, guys, let's do this. And they'd just be like, we're going to do it like this, actually, and it'll probably be okay. It's like, all right, fine, we're going to do it like this, but... but eventually the game came together, and it was a pretty good game. And it actually is released. You can go play it on good old games, Sanity's Icons, Artifacts. But the heartbreak for me was, I spent a lot of time trying to learn how to make a game, and I think I learned probably 40% of what I needed to actually know. But regardless, I had a good team, good people that I was working with, and they sort of guided me through the process. And we actually produced a really awesome game. I had to go on a press tour. I got to do a voice recording session with Ice-T, and he was, it's cool. And so it was like, my life was completely wrapped around this one game. But, and what happened, unfortunately, was the company, it ran into financial trouble. One of the games that it was launching, it was a, Shogo, it was about transforming robot shooter, blah, blah, blah. It didn't do as well as they thought it would, which, hard to believe, right? I would pretty much bet anything on that. And they needed the money from Shogo to fund my game. And so they funded it, they initially funded it for $4 million, and then the game was going so well, they decided to fund it for $8 million, but then they only had $6 million. And so what they ended up doing, we were a year away from launching the title. They actually sold the assets, they sold the game to a company called Fox Interactive, which is, huge media company. And those guys came in, and, they're just like, awesome guy, this game, cool, psychics blowing up, Ice-T, we're gonna buy it. Who's the designer? And I walk in, it's just 19-year-olds. I didn't dress like this. I don't ever dress like this. I just look like hell. And I probably crawled out from under my desk, and they're just like, that guy, you are out. We're gonna get some real game designers in. And so it was kind of the big opportunity for me, but also the biggest heartbreak was a year before I launched this thing. I was, essentially kicked off the project. I wasn't actually kicked off. They sidelined me, and they brought in some other designers, and I ultimately walked away because it's just, I no longer had creative control. They changed pretty much everything about how the game worked. Kept, I would say, 10% of the awesome ideas that were already, being developed. I think probably because I was making a game that probably was more like a $60 million game, which was probably one of the problems. And they ultimately got it out, and I learned kind of a big lesson for my life, which is one, I care too much about what I do to kind of to work for someone else or put the fate of it in the hands of someone else. And so I was partway through college, and kind of at a crisis point, whatever. I was having my first real life crisis. My life had been pretty good up till then, and I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do with myself? I don't want to I don't want to get involved in another game that's going to get canceled. I don't want to work for another company doing something else. I'm a horrible employee unless I'm working on something that I care about. And so I ultimately decided, well, there's all these things that I learned while I was working on Monolith that is stuff that I wish I had known, right? Stuff that I skipped over in school because, it was boring or didn't apply that, so for example, I learned that 3D engine, it's almost entirely math, right? And in high school, I didn't pay attention to all the math. until one day, one of the engineers sat me down. He's just like, here, look, Aaron, I write a little math in here, and look, I'm spinning a 3D cube. And I was like, what? I need to learn math. And so, so that was, so essentially at that point, I was like, I'm going to continue making games. It's the thing that I'm passionate about, but I want to learn absolutely everything about it so that when I get the opportunity to, again, make a pitch or, essentially pursue my dream, I am the guy that, when Fox or whoever comes in, there's like, who's running the show? And they look at me and like, oh, well, that's the guy. That's the guy that should be running it. He knows what he's doing. So I came back to this area. I grew up in Amherst. And basically went to school. I went back to UMass. I finished a degree in computer science, a degree in math. I went to I got the Bay State Scholarship, which is a great program that UMass has, where the undergrads can come and start in the grad student program. So I learned absolutely everything. All of a sudden, school was 100% relevant to me. I was able to every class, I was like, I know exactly what this has to do with making games. I will pay attention. You're welcome, professor. You have my full. And I would sit in the front row and just give it to me, right? And so, and that's what it was for me. Is that's what I needed to, make school matter to me, and make that experience, valuable to me. And so, I can't appreciate it more. And obviously, I met my wife there, so that was a huge boon. So I think, Dan's waving me on, but I think that's kind of my big message is, it's good to have passion. It's good to have drive. It's really good to have that passion, have that drive, and also know what you're doing. I don't necessarily know if I'd recommend the path that I went, but, and also being good at pitching is very valuable. So. So Diane asked me to hang around for questions. So I don't know if anyone had any thoughts, or we seeded at least one question. Oh, okay, great. I saw your arm in first.
What kind of games are you making now?
So actually, it's a really good question. So for the company's been around for about 6 years. We've almost been entirely focused on games that were targeted at a female demographic. So we make one of our games is Jane Austen. We acquired it from the BBC. It's a game about Jane Austen, and it's all older ladies and grandmothers that play it. We also and college students. Actually, there's some Mount Holyoke students that play it too. so not all ladies. And we also do Seaside Hideaway. So that we make most of our money from those kinds of games. We just launched a new game, which is not complete polar opposite, called Hail Marys, which is about it's about you just look it up on the website. It's for really depraved teenage boys. Way back there. How we find voice actors? Okay, so this is not a plug. Voice Bunny. So there's a website you go to. It's a crowdsourced website where you can upload a script, and you just get all these people auditioning for your script, and you get to pick. It's a few $1,000, and you get to pick the top 10 or whatever, and then you get them to record. And so it's probably one of the funnest things you can do is to write a script. So one of our games is a game called Fablewood, where we cast it's all these different fables. It's a little bit like the television show Once. So I had to write dialogue for Alice in Wonderland and Jack and the Beanstalk, and then we go put it up on Voice Bunny, and then hear all these people trying to pretend that they're bunny rabbits or Alice in Wonderland. It's like, oh, what a lovely blah blah blah. It's like, that's her. So we use a crowdsourced website. But in our first game, one of our first games was a game called Fate, which was like a dungeon hack and slasher. We actually hired the guy that was running the coffee shop across the street just because he was a demon. So it's like he looked like a demon. So way back there. All right, so he asked a question about the Unity game engine. So We do use Unity. It's probably it's the one that we use the most. Unity is a 3D engine, but we've been around long enough that we've used pretty much every technology. So we've built our own game engines. We use Flash, we use HTML, ActionScript, pretty much anything you can think of. But Unity is a very strong engine, that's for sure. Yeah, we outsource. So we do a lot of outsource art. I like to keep we have tried to outsource development, but engineers are hard enough to wrangle when you actually employ them. So I don't like to outsource development. Oh, do I partner with other? Would I partner with it? Probably. I don't. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
Scott Abdow out of GCC.
Hi.
Long story short, I love all the concepts that you've been coming up with, and I love the way that you present them.
Okay.
Is there any chance whatsoever that once all of this is done and all these people are done staring at me, that I can pick your brain for about 5 minutes?
Yeah. Fine. Not in like a weird Hannibal Lecter way, right? Yeah, let's do it.
I figured the best opportunity for a yes was while everyone
Yeah. No.
else
You
is staring at me.
you got it done. Good. Yeah. Sir. Do I have? Oh yeah. So most of our games are E for everyone. So one of our partners is Disney. So we made Winnie the Pooh games. We made Lion King games. We made Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid's actually my favorite Disney character. So laugh at me. We also did Disney Fairies. So most of our games, I prefer to make that kind of game. It's just Hail Marys is kind of a special case. It was a business decision more than anything else. Yeah, Hail Marys, yeah. Oh, please.
If you have a kid and your kid is addicted to video games, what are you going to do?
What am I going to do if my kid is addicted to video games? Well, all right, so I have a funny story about that. So I was a kid that was addicted to video games. Yeah, I might hire him. And I think that it was so bad for me, right? Obviously, Diane pointed out my older brother is a very important person in my life. He didn't used to visit very often, but anytime he visited, he'd bring video games, right? He's this figure in the game industry, and he would get all the cool games and bring them to when he came to visit his little brother, and but he also wanted us to hang out with him. And I was so into these games that instead of hanging out with him, I would just play them, right? Just totally ignore him. And so we have a picture where his solution for that was he duct taped me to the chair and he pulled me away and then just forced me to hang out with him. So maybe I'll pull something like that, or I don't know. You gotta be creative in those situations. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's your best advice for someone who's creating a game or an app or any business?
Sure. Well, I think it's a great question. It's one that I would have asked someone else to ask me, because I think I did think about it. I think the next project that you work on, it's not going to be your last. You're going to screw it up. So like I said, I don't know if I said this, but I've worked on over 300 games. None of them are my favorite ones. I like little pieces, but mostly I see kind of this trail of screw ups, and a lot of, not to say that I don't make good games. I make great games, but that's sort of, looking back, it's hard to kind of have an idea, think it's, and every time, right, it's my favorite idea. It's like, oh, this is the one, right? We had a game for diaper commercial, right? We were doing and it was a dancing baby, and the idea was we'd get people to post their Facebook pictures and superimpose them as a dancing baby, and people loved it, right? But we had to take it down because we almost got sued, and so it's just like, oh, it was such a good idea, but we didn't think about this one thing that totally screwed us. And so I think it's this idea that you can't give up. You have to always be pursuing the next thing, and even there's always a part of me that when I'm working on something, even though I know this is the awesomest stuff I can think of right now. I know deep inside that there's something better coming, that it's not going to be good, the awesomest thing I do for some reason. I'll learn something about it, and that what keeps me going is that there's going to be another project that's going to be even awesomer than the one that I'm working on currently. And so it's just that persistence and that kind of diligence to, keep getting better, keep improving that I think, that's what's seen me through. So, yeah.
So working with technology, you know that everything gets old very quick.
Yeah.
What's the one tool that you would say someone should use for working with video games right now? And
Yep.
second, what's the everlasting information or knowledge that you got that doesn't change even
Right.
though you were working?
That's a great question too. So right now Unity is a good engine. I met the CEO. He's a great guy. He's trying to sell the company, so it's not going to be a great engine for long because he'll sell it. But in terms of, but engines come and go, right? And tools come and go. Technology changes. And so that's, when I've managed engineers before, and I think that I manage technical people. And the thing that I hate to see in a technical person is where they get overly attached to a tool. And when you hear a programmer or anyone saying like, oh, I know Photoshop, but I don't know blah. Or I know 3D Max, but I don't know Maya. Or I know Ruby on Rails, but I don't know Python or whatever. That's the complete wrong mentality, right? You've got to be when it comes down to at a high level, it's all the same crap, right? It all does essentially the same thing. There's, they get varying levels of support depending on what's trendy. But, as a creative person and as a creator, you've got to kind of just see it as like, oh, there's just these things that I need to be able to do. And if I don't know how to do it and I need it, being proactive about learning it and just getting it done and not being intimidated about it is because I think you build up these mental walls about technology that it's like, oh, I need to take a class on Maya or blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. It's just like open it up and, try and make a 3D bunny rabbit. Like, what the heck, right? So I think, having a pretty relaxed mentality about learning stuff is always going to serve you. Yeah.
I think we have time for one.
Oh, okay. You're it, buddy. It better be awesome.
My name is Ajmal. I'm the founder of MyRise.
Okay.
I was interested in where you're sourcing your developers from, whether it's from Springfield or Holyoke or just geographically. Where are they coming from?
Sure. So this relates to a question that I was going to have someone ask me. So the reason that I ended up making my company in this area was because Audrey's here, which is, great. But it also turns out that there's just a huge wellspring of talent in this area. So I went to university at UMass. I actually started my first company at UMass. And, the realization that I made was that, hey, these guys want to make a game. This company, I think it was like Real or Big Fish or one of these companies, they want to make a game for $30,000 that, I could pay a friend of mine $3,000, which is, the amount at the time that a grad student made in 3 months to get it done in a weekend, right? And so there's, I obviously pay people better now, but, there's just a huge pool of technical talent in this area that, it's not super experienced, but it's super smart that, it's easy to deploy on these kinds of titles. And so my company's been, we're pretty small right now, but I managed up to 70 people, almost 100 people on some of the projects, and all of them sourced either from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, Hampshire College, Mount Holyoke, just, essentially a lot of people here, the kinds of people that are here is who we recruit. We have had challenges in the past of getting, it's good to have a bunch of really talented, eager, kids, but on a certain level of project, you want to have a couple people that, have actually had some experience. And so we've been pretty proactive about moving people to the area or reaching out to California or Texas sometimes. And actually the advantage of this area is people that actually from other areas actually want to move here. And so, you just have to ask, and typically the answer's been yes. So.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for sharing your story with us tonight.